To discuss the surge in oil prices and the impact this will have on the global economy, we're joined now by energy expert at the University of Qatar, Mahjoub Zwiery. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So the price of oil soared, and Brent crude, the benchmark, cost a barrel at nearly $115 per barrel earlier on. When was the last time it was at these levels?
I think this was, I think, more than 10 years. This was the level of the price. But we should be very careful when we assess the situation now. Everything is happening now. Basically, there's a psychological impact because of the crisis. The real crisis has not been hit yet, because still there's more oil and moving between countries. There are agreements between countries, and they are still active. So still the crisis is not being hit seriously. But we have to look at for how long the current crisis will last, and whether there will be alternatives who can basically fill the gap of the Russian production, for example, if this goes on.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Some commentators, they are saying that at this point Russian crude has become toxic. Can you talk a little bit more to that? Explain the concept for us.
At the end of the day, Russia is not part of OPEC as an organization. So there is no control on its oil, because countries who are a member of OPEC, there is, I would say, more control on how many barrels they can export, and they can have an impact on the price. Russia is not actually. So there is a possibility that, and which happened even before with Iran, there are countries maybe they will have to find ways to import oil from Russia in a way or other. But I mean, there's a whole issue that Russia and its energy will stay important on the market and until there is a replacement. And I don't think so that the countries are serious to look at the future for long term with, I would say, fully isolation of Russia and its oil production.
And we'll continue along that theme in just a moment, including the fact that gas prices have been under pressure for a while now, since I think October last year. But I want to talk about the effect of the London Stock Exchange suspending trading with 28 companies linked to Russia, including gas giant Gazprom and the country's second biggest lender, Sberbank. What will the effect of that be on as you talk about the geopolitical uncertainties, on commodity prices generally?
It is expected there will be a hit hard. Now there is a lot of who are really pessimistic about all of the measures taken by the countries, whether in Malta or other countries, how this will hurt the energy market in Russia. So we have, again, to look at this in a very global context and look at whether there are other players who can contribute, whether impose more sanctions and be serious on sanctions on Russia, or actually Russia will find an incredible countries who can basically less harsh or less, I would say, tough on Russia. I think there is we still monitor the situation, which is developing gradually, and it will take some time before we reach the point to assess the situation correctly and to make a real judgment about where things are moving.
Okay, so if perhaps let's just focus on the African continent and also just look at Eurasia. I understand that benchmark coal prices there surged by 46% to a record, and that Chinese buyers in particular run into difficulties securing financing for Russian coal purchases. And we have coal at something like 446 per ton US dollars at this point?
My apology, I couldn't catch the last two sentences of your question.
So I'm talking about the fact that, as you said, we have to look at the problem holistically, look at the bigger picture. But I am saying the war in the Ukraine has also contributed to pushing up commodities, coal being no exception at 446 US dollars per ton. That was according to Australia's Newcastle benchmark.
I think you look at the end of the day, the size of the economy is important. You have to look at the size of the economy of each country. Russia is a huge economy when you compare it with Ukraine. So, of course, the impact of all this in Ukraine will be less comparing with Russia. Russia is everywhere when it comes to the economy, the energy, and the impact of energy. I think also the size of the economy is one important factor. We have to look at it carefully. So before making the judgment on how things will move. At the end of the day, if you compare, how Ukraine will be affected economically, we have to consider what will be the aid already Ukraine was promised by different countries, which will help Ukraine to minimize the impact of this crisis if it actually comes to end sometime soon.
Well, can we juxtapose, as you say, it depends on the size of the economy. Some have said this could be an opportunity for Australia. But what about Africa as a continent? You can even look at South Africa as an example to juxtaposition how all of this will affect different countries.
I think, most of the countries now, because we are today in the day number 8 of the crisis. I think the countries are reviewing their position and reviewing the impact of the crisis on them day by day. I think there is sort of hope that the crisis will not last, and that is one scenario. But the other scenario is that the countries, including South Africa, including different countries, they will be able to accommodate themselves with what was happening, even gradually, by looking at what others are doing. So we, countries are basically dealing with the situation in a daily basis. I haven't seen or read something about long-term strategy, because there is still expectation that this crisis will not last for long. And I think maybe this is a wise thing to do for the time being, considering the military operation is not in favor of Russia until now. It should be, the plan was to be short and done quickly, but it's not the case as they planned.
I mentioned the price of soaring natural gas prices, that they're already on high. So this would also impact on energy bills for households. For Denmark, for instance, they were talking about an increase that could be anything between 20% to 200%. How could governments help communities or rather citizens who are already under pressure? Consumers, because of COVID-19, are ill-able to afford the most basic of needs. Are subsidies the way to go, or how can they mitigate the impact of energy bills?
Look, the energy issue is very tricky, it's very dangerous, because it does affect all elements of life. I think that causes a lot of concern to different governments, how this. The good thing is that we are not in I would say winter now. Maybe we are moving towards spring and summer, and this may be reduce the impact of the problem. But imagine the crisis if we are in winter or about the winter to start. I think there would be different scenarios.
And yes, unfortunately not so for South Africa. That's going towards winter and is possibly going to confront an increase in electricity tariffs. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Very much appreciated your time and your insights that there's energy